I have the great April Chapman here with me. We're going to discuss a few issues. We're going to see what she thinks about everything because she knows everything today on the Vince Everett Ellison Show. All right, let's get this thing started. My friend, April Chapman, give me some. Here today to tell us how we can cure all the ills of the world, how we can cure world famine and world hunger and cure cancer and bring love to the universe. That's why she's here. April, how you doing?
I am doing wonderful here in the great state of Virginia. Thank you so much, Vince, for having me.
It is my pleasure. You're the only person that will come on my show. So, no, I don't.
True.
Y'all, I don't usually have guests because I can't find many guests that are more provocative than me, except for April Chapman. And so April is nice enough to come down here, do some consulting work for me. And while she's here, I always make her come on my show because it's always just a great time. She's so smart. She gives such a wholesome insights, a lot of things going on out there in the world. And I appreciate you coming, April. I really do.
Listen, it takes a special person to be able to deal with you like long term.
I know that.
And so I think I've been uniquely equipped.
You have been.
Because you drive people to drink.
Yep. God is with you, and Jesus has touched your heart. Look, April, tell my audience a little bit about yourself. Last time you were here, I didn't really get into, where you grew up, your mother, your education, your show. Take a little bit of time and tell the people a little about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming most of your audience already knows who I am. But for those of you who don't, my name is April Chapman. I am host of Unshakable with April Chapman right here on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I've been creating this provocative, politically charged, socially confrontational content that is theologically rooted for about 3 years. And the whole purpose of me coming on YouTube was to use my voice to educate particularly Christians on how to navigate this secular world that is becoming increasingly more hostile to Christianity, teaching my audience, how to navigate these cultural issues and how the people of God should be thinking about so many topics, from politics to even things that go on in evangelical Christendom.
Yeah,
so that's me.
And you gotten pushback. And you and I met, we met guys behind this documentary right here. We go to hell for me. I did not know April before. We've known each other less than a year.
It's been about a year.
About a year, yeah. It's when yeah. And so she saw this documentary and she sought me out and had me on her show. And then she took this documentary and said, Vince, I'm going to play your documentary in a theater in Atlanta, Georgia. And I said, what? She said, yes. I said, you looking to get lynched? She said, I ain't scared of nothing. I'm going to play it down in Atlanta, Georgia, where Martin Luther King Jr. was not only a pastor, but he's also buried and grew up because the people need to hear the truth. The Iron Triangle the Iron Triangle did too also, but this, Would You Go to Hell for Me, bought the truth. She read the Iron Triangle and asked me to come to Atlanta. I came to Atlanta, I met her and her husband, Robert, 4 beautiful children, her friends, and everybody hit it off fine. And since that time, we've been like 2 peas in a pot because we kind of saw that we were going in the same direction. We wanted to teach America, we wanted to teach Christians that there was a conspiracy out there to separate especially black and white Christians, and that the black church, the quote-unquote black church, was in serious trouble. Now, recently, you spoke on this issue about the black preachers and how they were kind of leading their black congregations astray.
Yes.
And then Ali Beth Stuckey spoke on this issue. You and Ali Beth were kind of right here on the prosperity ministry thing.
Right.
And these black preachers came down on you like a ton of bricks.
Listen.
And so you recently went to Dallas.
I did.
And appeared on Ali Beth's show. It's coming up. We don't know when, but it'll be showing pretty soon.
Right.
So talk about that controversy and how it started and why these black preachers lost their minds.
Right. Well, like you said, I was recently in Dallas, recorded with Ali Beth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it had to do with a benign statement that Ali Beth made about the prosperity gospel in general. It was a show that she was doing with Melissa Doherty, and they were just talking about different heresies and different false doctrines that have crept into Christendom. And then in passing, Allie said, why is this also prevalent in majority black churches?
Right.
I've seen that a lot. And in the course of that conversation, maybe 2 minutes long, it sparked this whole controversy. Some black pastors got wind of it and decided to racialize it by saying, why are these two white women saying this about the black church? And then why is this one black YouTuber who happened to be, shout out to you, Corey Minor, why is he agreeing with her? And I'm sitting here like, okay, so we just gonna act like the elephant in the room is not the fact that the prosperity gospel, as well as a number of other heresies, have crept in to the black church.
Black liberation theology and the social gospel and all that too, right? Yeah.
Right, causing a lot of apostasy.
Right.
It has fomented so much racial grievance and ethnic partiality that wasn't seen or was not as prevalent 8 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago.
Bad,
Yeah. And so what I did was I did a show on my show responding to their accusations against Allie Beth, and I stood with her. To me, it was just one sister in the Lord affirming what another sister in the Lord said, and I was just like, I don't know these categories that you guys are speaking of. Whiteness and then the blackness and the black church. It's funny, you and I were talking the other day, and I'm gonna say something that is provocative, and I'm not trying to take over the show, but would love for you to elaborate on it, where you said that at this point in time, having an institution known as the black church is really no longer necessary.
Exactly.
And I said, ooh.
Yeah.
Those are fighting words, Vince. So talk to me or to your audience. What did you mean by that statement? What is the source of that thesis that you were saying that the black church is unnecessary now?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
We all know the history of this nation about slavery and then Jim Crow and about segregation, and that for a very long time there was a false Christianity taught down south. It's Christianity of segregation, of whiteness and blackness and racial separation, Ku Klux Klan burning crosses, and there was all right to produce violence in the name of Christianity.
Oh, what about slavery?
It's slavery, yeah. All of it was an insanity. And then after about maybe, in the 1980s, after the 1970s, something started taking place in the Christian community. The white Christian community started saying, guys, we were wrong about that. The Southern Baptist Convention put out a long apology explaining we were wrong, this was not right, slavery was wrong, racial segregation is wrong, we're all one blood. We apologize, this will not happen again. Our churches are open to any and everyone, all believers in Christ.
Right.
And so after that, before that, the need for the black church was necessary because white churches would not allow black people inside of it. And you walked in a white church, you might get hung. Man, they hang you in the church courtyard. That is not the case anymore. And as a matter of fact, it'll be hard-pressed to find a quote-unquote church with a majority white population that will not invite and welcome black people into it. I haven't come across one. They might, dig deep and find the bull corner of white churches.
Like a Westboro.
A bunch of crazy white folks somewhere. But that is an extreme. It is not like that any longer. And we've always said, and black people have admitted for years, that the most segregated time in America is on Sunday morning. We've always lamented that because we always knew that Christianity was not supposed to be segregated in any way. Now that Christianity is desegregated, not so much as integrated, but desegregated, where people can go and worship where they please without any fear of being hostile. You say, why do you need the black church? Why do you need the white church? Why do you need the Hispanic church? We're all one blood.
Let me push back a little bit because some would say, for example, my paternal side of the family, they migrated here from the Dominican Republic. Yes. Now, granted, they didn't always speak English, but they learned the language. But think about, there are a lot of immigrants who come here from other parts of the world who, for example, you might have an Indian congregation or the iglesia, a Hispanic congregation. And we would never say that you don't need a Hispanic church or an Indian church or a Vietnamese church. We would never say that.
I would.
You would?
Yeah, you don't need it. Let's all come together and let's praise Jesus Christ. We're all brothers and sisters.
Okay.
We don't need it. It's almost like saying to the American government now, why do we still have these categories of race and gender? When you go to France, everybody's just a Frenchman. When you go to Britain, everybody's a Brit. Black or white, they don't care. It's like hair color, right?
Right.
Do people care if you're blonde, if you're brunette, or if your hair is gray? They don't say, well, we don't let gray-haired people come in here, and we don't let blonde people or blue-eyed people. We look at skin color.
We do.
And the only way that we're going to stop it is by stop looking at skin color the same way we don't look at eye color or hair texture or any of it. We have to let it go and say, look, hey, you're welcome. Come in. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. We don't need to be divided based on anything except for I believe in Jesus and I don't.
So do you think there might possibly, maybe a case could be argued if you are new to the country and you don't speak the language and there happens to be a church there that has a majority population of individuals from where you're from, would you have an issue with that?
No, not really. The language barrier makes sense. You want to be able to explain what you want to be able to understand what's going on.
Okay.
So there's situations where, and we all going to have our tastes in why we go to service and what churches we might choose and this and that and the other. That's all fine. I'd say that when it comes down to things like race, the color of your skin and where you're from, I don't see why that should be any way prevalent in deciding how you're going to worship Jesus Christ.
Now, I would agree with that. But here's the problem. It's easy for us to go into a majority white congregation and say, you need to be more welcoming to black people. Do we ever see the inverse happen where people are going to black congregations saying, well, why don't you have more white people in your church? Because I've never seen that. I mean, it's perfectly okay to go to a majority black congregation and not expect to see a white person, but somehow that same standard isn't applied to a white congregation. It's almost like there's added pressure on them to go and recruit more black people so that their congregations can be considered diverse. Now, people will argue and say, well, the reason why that is, you're neglecting, April, to acknowledge why the black church existed. We have just acknowledged why it existed, that it was wrong, but let's move past that now and move forward. We don't need, do you think that we're still trying to hold on to something of yesteryear so that we can glory in the reason the black church has stood the test of time during a time when, we weren't allowed to do this, that, and the third? Do you think we just are still trying to hold on to that and we don't want to let it go? We don't want to move forward. We really don't want to see unity amongst the brethren?
Well, there are two things happening. First of all, in his book, The Negro Problem in America, The American Dilemma, Gunnar Dahl talked about this. It was interesting. He said that black people were very reluctant to go to white churches because of the racism. He said, but when a white person would come to a black church, the black ushers would take that white person and take them to the front pew and set them down. And black people would celebrate that a white person came to their church. I've seen that myself when I grew up in the South.
But isn't that a form of partiality?
It always have, of course. The black folks, these black Democrats don't think they know better unless white folks stand beside them. That's their problem. Fighting for integration and schools, and I'm the only black person on the job. I'm the only black person living in it. They don't think the Black Caucus fighting for DEI integration is always about them not thinking that they are any good, that they are nothing. Setting beside white folks on buses, use the bathroom beside them. So when a white man came to the church and he was a mayor or he was whomever he would be escorted to the front. Yes, sir, boss, sit down. And everybody started clapping. That's true. And everybody that's over 50 years old know it's true. Now you got this other situation. Why? What white person wants to come to a black church and be called oppressor, be called racist,
right?
Talk about DEI, talking about a colonizer, conservatives are horrible, Republicans are horrible. Now, they'll let some LGBTQ joker with green hair come in and he'll feel comfortable in that situation.
Right.
Or they'll bring him up to the top of the church and sit down there and hug him and kiss him. But if a true blue conservative Christian walks into that church, which is a majority of white people down south, they're not going to feel comfortable there. Because the first thing they're going to hear, because most of the time these black preachers put on a political rally at these churches.
Not most time, a majority of the time.
I'm not talking about baptism, forgiveness, forbearance, any of it. Politics, 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 politics. And nobody wants to voluntarily come to be abused. Black people will volunteer to be abused. But most white folks are not going to volunteer to be abused. They're not going to come somewhere to be beat down and broken down. And so they see this stuff on TV. They see the Sharptons and the Jamal Bryants. And who's that other joke was talking about? White privilege. The one you showed talking to me about the other night. Kamala Harris is, Brian, the little congressman from Dallas. What's her name?
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett's a minister. What's his name?
Oh, Freddie Haynes.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
You see these people, and you think that they are a caricature of all black ministers.
That's true.
And so white people see this, and I can see them saying, "Man, I ain't going up in there."
Right. Jamal Bryant is making international news. I just saw him today on Sky News Australia. I said, "Wow."
Yeah, all these black churches now, even though they're supposed to be Christian, they more like Nation of Islam churches. You walk up in there now with the type of racial hatred that they're screaming at, and that's the reason why a lot of white people don't want to go and be a part of it. But again, and you will very seldom hear a white minister say anything negative about black people as black people. But you will hear a black minister go up and talk about white society and white America like white people like they dogs, and they don't want any part of that. And that's not Christian.
It's not.
It is not right. And I would hope that this will be the last generation of these shysters who are doing so much damage to the Christian religion as a whole, and it's being ridiculed all over the world because of them.
Right.
Now, you've been involved in the pro-life movement for a very, very long time. You guys had a march in Atlanta a couple of months ago, was it?
Yeah, we had two. We had the Stand for Life rally and then the March for Life rally. It's an annual event. Georgia, the state where I'm from, we have a heartbeat bill. However, babies are still being murdered in the state of Georgia. Our heartbeat bill is not enforced. And then there's very little regulation with any of these clinics. Most of them have not been inspected in a very, very long time. So it's kind of like we aggressively fought to have that legislation passed. And now that we have it, though, unless you're going to enforce it, it's not better than the piece of paper that it's written on.
Yeah, that's a side part to this march, though. It was real cold that day, and you was trying to be cute. And you left your big coat at home.
Man, listen, I had just bought, because I was with you in Detroit about a month before that, bought this beautiful coat. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm only going to go down there and I'm going to give, my speech. How cold can it get? It was just like 60-something degrees the day before. Y'all, it was like in the 30s. And I had on this little thin trench coat. I was like, okay, I don't know what I was thinking. And you called me out. You was like, you bought that big old coat and you didn't wear the coat.
Plus, you didn't think you had to march that day and you wore your nice little shoes.
I did.
And they pulled you into the march. And you had to march in them heels.
And I was marching. Listen, they were just like, oh, no, you're going to be the head of the march. I was like, say what now? I said, oh.
And the feet was talking to you.
Man. And that march was all around downtown Peachtree, through Georgia State, around, back again. Man, I was so happy to get into my car. I was blessed and honored to participate in the march, but my feet didn't get the memo. My feet didn't get the memo.
Well, this is what you get. But you good at starting trouble. I remember we was up in Detroit at the Blexit thing, and you did your interview with Anton Daniels.
Yes, I did. That's right.
Everything went great up there. It was cold. You had your big coat, but we was all cool. We was getting ready to leave, getting ready to get in the Uber, get to the airport, and you gonna start fighting with a dude in the hotel lobby. in Detroit, where everybody, the murder capital of the world, everybody up there got a gun and shit shooting jokers in the street, and you gonna start arguing with this drunk?
First of all, I don't have reason. Okay, I have some reason to believe he was a drunk, but I did not start that fight. What happened was I was minding my business, and he wanted to talk. And somehow the conversation went left, and he asked me my thoughts.
Hey, I'm from
on
Brownsville,
the election.
Tennessee, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and I knew when I heard this dude start talking to you, I said, I hope April don't engage this idiot in no political conversation right now. Oh, but you couldn't resist.
It wasn't that. How would you have handled it? He asked me, what did I think about the job that President Trump was doing? How would you expect me to answer?
I said, what do you think about it? And then once he said, it's okay, man. Peace out.
I didn't even think to ask. Well, I didn't care what he thought about it.
I know he was pulling you into a conversation to start some mess, and I said, okay, April ain't gonna never back down from a fight. Next thing I know, he walking up, he said, you in my space, you in my space.
Like,
you need to back up. You
me.
better back up off me. And I'm like, oh man, this thing finna go left real bad. So I stood up and said, hey man, back up, dude, back up. No, I said, man, back up, man. Good God, man. So Robert gonna knock me out if something happened to April. So I got to get involved in this. And finally, we cooled it down. But
he followed us to the Uber.
Yeah, I know it. And I'm looking at this dude thinking he might go into his pocket and pull out a gun because you just lighting him up. And he mad and he can't answer your questions. I said, April, please, let's go.
But wasn't it sad to see a man
It was.
emote that much off of?
You was.
I wasn't yelling.
No.
I was not hostile toward this man.
No,
I simply.
He couldn't break your argument and start getting
Right.
angry. He wasn't rational.
No.
But you know, he was a microcosm of the black community. He was a microcosm of the left.
Yeah.
They can't debate, and all they go into histrionics and yelling and screaming or lying. And when you watch them, and this is why, of course, you told me about the debate you had with the leftist professor
Georgia State. Mm-hmm.
at Georgia State, and how you just ripped him apart just based on facts. Because when you took away from him the fact that I'm not inferior to you,
Right.
he was like,
Yeah,
because every black person ever told has always told him about white supremacy, right?
Yes.
And you told him you have no superiority
No.
over me.
I think it was empowering. It's empowering for a lot of liberals, particularly white ones, when they are allowed to affirm that there is such a thing as white supremacy or that they have white privilege. I mean, imagine if you've been told this. I mean, a little pride is going to raise up in you.
And even black people tell them that.
Right. So it's one thing for you as a white person to believe that, but for someone who claims to be the oppressed one, affirms it, what else are you going to do but be like, you know what, maybe I am a little superior. And then in a false sense of humility, you attempt to lower yourself down by denouncing your privilege. And I'm like, how are you denouncing something that's not even real?
And that proves you're such a good person because I've denounced my privilege to allow you to come near me and sit in my glory.
Which to me gives them more power.
Of course. And that's where they get their power from. But then when you walk up to them and say, you have no privilege over me.
He ain't know what to do with that.
It's almost like when Christ, and I know you don't compare yourself to Jesus though, but when Pilate told Christ, I have the ability to put you to death, he said, you have no power over me.
Right.
And it was like Pilate saying, you have no power over me.
It kind of disarmed him and it infuriated him because I talked a lot about, being a Negro American, as I like to refer to myself, functioning in my freedom and taking advantage of every opportunity that this country has afforded me by working by the sweat of my brow and based on my own merit. I was using language that it wasn't language that a victim would spout. And he just wasn't used to hearing it, and he didn't know how to engage with it. And he wanted to convince me that there were limitations and things that I could not do. And the one example he brought up was he tried to imply that there are black people today that are unable to purchase a home on the basis of their ethnicity. He argued that. And I said, sir, you are a constitutional law professor. You're trying to tell me that if I have credit worthiness, I have the appropriate credit score, I have income documentation, I can't buy a house because I'm black wherever I want.
You met my father.
did.
He bought a house in 1972. That is 53 years ago.
Right.
53 years ago. Paid it off, and it's still there today. And he's going to try to, and this guy going to try to tell you
Yes.
that you can't buy one, or that some other black person can't buy one. And my father in the Mississippi Delta, in the Mississippi Delta bought one 52 years ago. It's ridiculous, and they tell us that in order to make us believe it's our color, and it ain't our credit.
Right.
It ain't our debt income ratio.
Come on.
You know, they don't want to tell you because those are things that you can fix.
Ah.
See, you can fix those. You can't fix race. It's because I'm black. Negro, it's because you make $3,000 a month and you got $2,700 worth of bills and you want to pay $1,000 on the house. You can't do that, man. The math don't work. You ain't not gonna give you a loan for that. You have my credit $700. You don't have an extra $1,000 a month, man.
You need more than that.
You got to make more money. And so they want you to believe it's credit. No, it's credit. Debt income ratio, many other things. And then they go check the house to see if the house is worth what you want to own, what you want to loan, all this kind of thing. So anyway, see, you can fix all of that. Do you have the down payment? It's going to take...
No. You know what? They'll say, well, it's still systemic racism because I didn't have 3-4 generations before me have the privilege of owning a home. Now I'm starting from scratch and I haven't had the time in order to save up for that down payment. That's their excuse.
My dad was an orphan. He was raised by 2 old folks who were sharecroppers. Where was his generational wealth?
Come on.
No, you have to decide if it takes whatever percentage down. If you need it, you say, I start planning 2 years out.
Right.
It shows that you got skin in the game. I'm willing to put 10% down, 5% down, in order
3.5%,
whatever, because it shows that I'm responsible,
right,
and that I don't want to lose my money.
Right. So you got.
So I have an incentive to make sure that I pay this house off. And bank says that guy's serious.
Right.
But see, these are things that you can change. These are things that as soon as you become an adult, you can start planning so that when you get your first home at 25, 26, 27, you're straight. It doesn't come on you as a surprise.
Right.
But, you know, we don't teach our children about that, do we? We want to tell them it's racism. Don't even try, boy, you beat before the game even started. And that's what this guy wants to tell you, too. And you put him in his place, and he know how to take it because it's just like this old, my sister sent me this thing of old slave, the voices of old slaves that actually were slaves at the end of the Civil War. And this white guy was on this video, and he said that he was a young man, and he said that he went out there telling the old slaves what he was going to do for them. We're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, we're going to give you that, we're going to give you this. And he said this old black man sat on a wagon wheel, and he said, he looked at me and he said, you still got that disease, don't you? And he said, what disease is that? Disease that you think that you can free me. He said, I was born free just like you. Right. The same God that freed you freed me. He said, and I can make a living just like you can make it. I don't need nothing you got. And he said, he made me mad. Boy, I was so mad. And then after years, I sat there and thought that old man was right.
I don't want nothing you got.
I want nothing you got. And when you tell them that, it shakes them up. Muhammad Ali, I don't want nothing you got. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to earn it. Malcolm, I don't want nothing you got. I'm going to go earn it. And when black people tell them that, it shakes these white liberals up because you used to the Sharptons and Jamal Bryant's out there on their knees, begging, crying, and snotting, talking about they need DEI to compete because the white man is just, you just can't fight him, you can't beat him when it comes down to competition, you know? And when we tell people different, because you're heirs of Jesus Christ, you're children of God, you don't need to cry, you don't need to march, you don't need to snot, you can't be oppressed. It puts them in a position where they say, how do we come out against that? And they can't. And you'll see their heads almost explode behind it. All right, let me ask you this question here. There's been a division between black and white Christians in this country for a very long time. We know about the race thing. We know how that came about.
Right.
We just talked about the fact that that is no longer relevant in this America. Why do you think this division is still here, and who do you think benefits from it?
Well, for one, a lot of the division is prevalent because on both sides, on the white side and the black side, there is a fundamental misunderstanding of the implications of the gospel. Let me explain. The gospel of Jesus basically reconciles filthy, wretched sinners to a righteous and holy God. So now we have right relationship and fellowship with him and the forgiveness of our sin. But the implications of the gospel is that good news of salvation, of grace through faith, through the person and work of Jesus, isn't just for one people group, i.e. the Jews. Jesus came and brings a new covenant, and a part of that new covenant includes people of every tribe, tongue, nation, and people group, Jew, Gentile, men, women. They're just these distinctions that were once present. The dividing line of hostility, that line is gone. And so not only are these filthy, wretched sinners reconciled to a righteous and holy God, but we're reconciled to one another.
Yes, we are.
So how can there be division in the body of Christ if you are a believer and you hold claim to the truth of what the gospel has accomplished? The gospel is, yes, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures. That part of the gospel is true. But now it's, I don't have hatred in my heart against people who don't look like me.
Can't have hatred, right?
Because God has done so much for me that I didn't deserve, and he's reconciled. We have peace with God and peace with one another. So the division is kept going by individuals who don't understand the gospel, who've not had the gospel wrought and changed their heart. You have a lot of false professors and false Christians claiming the name of Christ who, because they're goats, they're not actually sheep, they're not going to parrot the message of the gospel. So it's very easy for them to stoke this division. The Apostle Paul says, where do these fights and divisions come from among you? They come from your flesh. They come from the indwelling sin that's in you. So you have particular factions in the black apostate church that are fomenting this division. They don't want reconciliation. And then you have their white sympathizers who have actually believed the lie that there is systemic racism or oppression by white people, and that white people need to continue to atone for the sins of the past and giving up their privilege. To me, those two are just as bad. The black apostate and the white apostate race grievance virtue signaling sympathizer. They're both two sides of the same coin who don't understand the gospel and who very well might be false professors in and of themselves.
You know what? You segue, right here. My book, my very first one. It says Iron Triangle, how Democrats are using race to divide Americans in their quest for power, and how we can stop them.
Okay, so to flesh that out
There
specifically, we can lay this charge at the feet of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, they'll use whatever they can use to keep black and white Christians separated.
Right.
They know that if we ever come together, I mean, I did a show about 2 or 3 weeks ago showing that only 36% of Democrats say they're Christian.
Wow.
And black people make up a little over a third of the Democratic
Party.
Party. So that's probably just the black part. So most white folks in the Democratic Party are basically saying they won't believe in God.
They're atheists.
And they use these black people, and black people have sided with this satanic cult.
Right.
And to help them beat down other black Christians. And this is where the LGBTQ in schools and the drag queens in the schools and pulling the Bible and pouring out, the black vote gives these jokers the power to do it.
Do you think black people know that? Do you think they've wrapped their minds around the fact that they are aiding and abetting a demonic, wicked, evil institution?
They didn't, but now they are. The last election shows that there is a tipping point because of shows like yours. You have 104,000 subscribers now.
Crazy.
And, y'all, and that is a big deal. I mean, only 0.5% of all YouTubers, and there's like 5 million YouTube channels or something like that.
There's a lot of them.
And only about 0.5% get to 100,000 subscribers. And April made it, and she made it in record time. So
You're right behind me, though.
Well, I'm right behind you, but this just shows that people are listening to the content.
Right.
They're responding to the content, and then they share it, they spread it, and they use it. And people are winning and losing elections by 1,000, 2,000 votes. I mean, Trump lost Georgia by 11,000 votes.
Right.
See what I'm talking about? You've got 104,000 subscribers.
You know, I didn't look at it that way. Now I see what you mean.
See what I mean? He lost Michigan by like about 10,000. So see, when you're losing and winning elections
Right.
in that margin, when you are putting this information out there and the black people that vote 100% for the Democratic Party change that vote, the Democrats have lost 2 votes. It's not that you just stayed home.
Right.
You then voted for the other side. And so you being able to change the minds of 104,000, and these are just subscribers,
Right.
which means these are households, which means that it's at least a husband and a wife,
Could be.
and a husband, wife, and children.
Right.
So if you got 100,000, that's at least 200,000, and probably 500,000 that is really affecting, because as you know, with YouTube, it's on the television. As one subscriber, everybody watches in that household.
Right.
See what I mean? And this is why what you and I do have such an effect, more of an effect than we know. And we talk right to this issue, and we make it unambiguous to people. The Democratic Party, as I said again, here is an evil institution. The evilest institution in the history of the world. It's a party of perverts, liars, psychopaths, anti-Christian bigots, and who else?
Thugs, hoes, and rappers. Them darn Democrats. They don't disappoint. They love them some thugs, hoes, and rappers. Okay.
And this is why we make it unambiguous, and they hadn't been doing that before. They preach against this stuff in their churches, but they never tell you that the Democratic Party supports it. Black
Some
folks
of
be up
them,
clapping.
you know what,
Now they are.
Some of them won't preach against it in their churches because they're in bed with the Democrat
And that's why
Party.
the people are leaving.
Right.
Because we put it to a point where they had to.
Yes.
We brought it right to them. And I told you that if your pastor is affiliated with the Democratic Party, that sucker's an apostate.
Cut it out.
I'm going to make it just as plain to you as you possibly can. Keep this with you. Put it in your pocket. Write it down and read it. Put it on your refrigerator before you leave. If my pastor is affiliated with the Democratic Party, he's an apostate, he's a liar, he's a hypocrite. He's an antichrist, anti-Christian bigot. Why? Because the Democratic Party supports castrating little boys and calling them little girls.
Right.
They support 9-month abortion.
Show enough.
They support putting the Bible out of schools and putting pornography in. They support them open borders and bring all that fentanyl and sex trafficking in. They want to take your guns away so you can't defend yourself in your own home. These jokers are crazy or they're evil. Either one, they shouldn't be in no place of leadership.
Right.
So April, you've been doing God's work. You do it well. Your channel is blowing up. You're getting a lot of exposure because Allie Beth Stuckey is big.
No, that was huge.
Stephen Gardner.
That's right.
Stephen's show huge. Stephen texted you yesterday.
He did.
So
hey, Stephen.
So you're getting all of these grand opportunities. You was on Poppin' Politics.
I was.
Newsmax.
That's true.
See that? April Star. she be walking through the airport and everybody just says, April Chapman.
Nuh-uh.
But you can't hardly go out no more without people knowing you.
No, I mean, people notice me, but the ones that actually say something are the ones that are acknowledging, hey, I like your stuff. And then there are others that notice me, but they don't like my stuff. And they kind of just look, but they don't say anything.
Well,
so it's a mix.
You're making an impact.
Thank you.
And and you're making it easier for other people to come out because you've set the template. I think now we're making it easier for other people to come out and say it.
Right.
We're also giving them a lot of information to use.
Courage is contagious.
It is. And for all you people that comment, subscribe, and like this show and like April's, we thank you. We're going to keep on moving. Can't stop, won't stop, don't even know how to stop. April, I want to thank you.
Thank you, sir.
For coming here. And like I told you all the time, and I tell you again today, I am here to wake you up. Hope we did you some good today. So join me again for another edition of the Vince Everett Ellison Show.